My beloved child. The night Daniel first heard the voice was cold and unnaturally still. At exactly 3:33 a.m., his eyes opened as though an unseen hand had summoned him from sleep. The old wooden walls of his home trembled softly while the lights flickered like dying candles in a forgotten chapel. Then came the whisper, deep, calm, eternal. You have not been abandoned. Daniel's breath froze. Upon the wall beside his bed, a radiant symbol slowly appeared, glowing with golden fire no earthly flame could produce. Fear gripped his soul, yet beneath the terror stirred something ancient and holy, as if heaven itself had finally spoken his name after years of silence. How is your child's health today? Please share in the comments so we can all pray for each other. The rain descended upon the city like a curtain drawn across another world, heavy and relentless, washing the empty streets in silver shadows. Daniel walked alone beneath the trembling glow of dying streetlights, his coat soaked through as the echo of the mysterious voice from the previous night still haunted his thoughts. Ever since the clock had struck 3:33 a.m., something within him had changed. The world no longer felt ordinary. Every silence carried weight. Every gust of wind seemed to whisper secrets too ancient for human understanding. As thunder rolled across the heavens, Daniel noticed an old man standing beneath the archway of an abandoned church. His garments were worn and darkened by the storm, yet his eyes carried a strange brilliance, like fire buried beneath centuries of sorrow and wisdom. The old man stared directly into Daniel's soul, as if he had known him long before that moment. You hear the voice, don't you? The stranger asked quietly. Daniel froze. His heart pounded violently against his chest. Before he could answer, the old man stepped closer and whispered with grave certainty, There are things hunting your soul, child, things that fear the light resting upon you. The words struck Daniel with unnatural force. For an instant, the rain itself seemed to stop. The city grew silent, even the thunder faded into distant emptiness. Daniel turned sharply as headlights swept across the street behind him, but when he looked back, the old man was gone. No footsteps, no shadow. Nothing remained except the rain and the hollow sound of water dripping from the church roof. The next morning, Marcus laughed at the story over black coffee and cigarette smoke. You're exhausted, Daniel, he said. Voices, glowing signs, disappearing prophets. Your mind's creating fantasies because you want meaning in your miserable life. Yet Daniel could not shake the feeling that what he had encountered was more real than the world around him. Deep within his spirit, an ancient fear had awakened alongside a strange and sacred calling. The house had been silent since Daniel's mother passed away, as though grief itself still lingered within the old wooden walls. Dust covered the hallway like forgotten ashes, and the air carried the faint scent of candle smoke and ancient paper. Near midnight, unable to resist the strange pull growing inside his spirit, Daniel climbed the narrow staircase toward the locked room his mother had forbidden anyone to enter while she was alive. The door resisted at first, groaning softly, as if disturbed from a sacred sleep. When it finally opened, a cold breath of air swept across his face. The room was dim, illuminated only by moonlight slipping through cracked curtains. Shelves lined the walls, filled with worn books and strange symbols carved into dark wood. At the center of the room rested an ancient Bible bound in faded leather, its pages marked with unfamiliar writings in red ink. Beside it lay several journals written in his mother's trembling hand. Daniel opened one carefully, his pulse quickening as he read passages describing visions, celestial warnings, and a child chosen before the dawn of his birth. His hands began to shake. Every description pointed toward him. Then he saw it. A strange symbol burned into the wooden floor beneath the desk, the same glowing mark that had appeared on his bedroom wall at 3:33 a.m. Suddenly, the room darkened. A voice emerged from behind him. If you open the truth, a woman whispered softly, they will come for you. Daniel turned sharply. Standing near the doorway was a young woman dressed in black, rainwater dripping from her coat, though no storm touched the house. Her pale eyes carried both fear and wisdom far beyond her years. My name is Sophia, she said. Your mother spent her life hiding what they feared you would become. Before Daniel could speak, the candles upon the shelves ignited by themselves, casting trembling shadows across the walls. Outside, somewhere beyond the trees, Dark figures stood watching the house in complete silence. The nights around Daniel's house no longer felt natural. A suffocating stillness lingered over the property after sunset, as though the darkness itself had become alive and watchful. The wind no longer sang through the trees. Even the insects had fallen silent. Each evening, Daniel felt unseen eyes resting upon him from beyond the fog-covered woods surrounding the old house his mother once called sacred ground. Unable to ignore the growing fear within his spirit, Daniel installed security cameras around the property. For 2 nights, nothing appeared except shadows drifting beneath the pale moonlight. But on the 3rd night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the cameras captured something that caused his blood to run cold. Figure. Tall men clothed entirely in black stood motionless beyond the iron gate. Their faces were hidden beneath dark hoods, their hands folded before them like silent mourners at an ancient funeral. They did not move. They did not speak. Yet somehow their presence carried a terrible weight, as though they were waiting for permission to enter. Daniel replayed the footage again and again, unable to breathe. Marcus slammed his hand against the desk in frustration. "This is insane," he shouted. "You found old journals, mysterious symbols, and now suddenly hooded figures appear outside your house. Daniel, this is exactly how cults manipulate people." Daniel's eyes remained fixed on the screen, his face pale beneath the flickering light. "No," he whispered slowly. "This is something else." Marcus scoffed bitterly. "You're losing yourself chasing ghost stories." But Daniel could feel it deep within his soul, that ancient stirring growing stronger with every passing night. The symbols, the voice, Sophia's warning, the men outside, none of it felt imagined. It felt orchestrated, as though invisible hands had been guiding him toward a truth buried long before his birth. Then suddenly the camera feed distorted. Static consumed the screen, and for one brief second, a single hooded figure appeared impossibly close to the camera, staring directly into it with glowing silver eyes before the image went black. The storm arrived without warning, swallowing the heavens in rolling darkness as Daniel stood alone inside his mother's hidden chamber. The ancient Bible remained open upon the desk, its brittle pages trembling, though no wind touched the room. Outside, thunder shook the earth like distant drums, announcing the rise of forgotten kingdoms. Daniel could feel something sacred drawing near, something vast enough to make his soul tremble beneath its presence. Then the candles extinguished all at once. Darkness consumed everything. For a brief moment, silence ruled the world. Suddenly, a radiant light burst forth from the strange symbol carved into the floor, flooding the chamber with golden fire, unlike anything born from human hands. Daniel fell to his knees, shielding his eyes as the light surrounded him like a living force. And from within that brilliance came the voice, deep, eternal, filled with both terrifying power and indescribable peace. "My child," it said, "you were chosen before your first breath entered the world." The words pierced through Daniel's spirit like ancient prophecy, awakening after centuries of silence. His heartbeat slowed. Time itself seemed to stand still around him. Then the visions began. He saw cities burning beneath blood-red skies. Towers collapsed into oceans of flame while crowds fled through streets drowned in panic and violence. Nations marched against nations. The earth trembled. Great darkness spread across the world like a living plague, swallowing entire cities beneath smoke and despair. Church bells rang through abandoned streets while shadowed figures wandered among the ruins, searching for hope that no longer remained. Daniel gasped as another vision appeared. A lone figure, clothed in light, stood upon a mountain overlooking the chaos. Though the face remained hidden, Daniel somehow understood the terrifying truth. The figure was him. "No," he whispered, overcome with fear. "Why are you showing me this?" The heavenly voice answered with solemn authority. "Because the hour approaches when darkness will seek dominion over the hearts of men. And you, Daniel, were called to stand against it." As the light slowly faded, Daniel remained trembling upon the floor, forever changed by the revelation that his life had never truly belonged to him alone. Rain pressed softly against the stained windows of the old cafe, as Daniel sat across from Marcus beneath the dim amber glow of hanging lamps. Outside, the city moved in restless silence, unaware that within those walls a battle far older than either man was unfolding, a battle between faith and reason, spirit and intellect, destiny and human will. Marcus leaned forward, his tired eyes burning with frustration. "You're letting fear consume you," he said sharply. "Voices from the sky, prophetic visions, hooded figures standing outside your house, Daniel. None of this is supernatural. Trauma creates illusions. The human mind invents meaning when life becomes unbearable." Daniel remained silent for a moment, his fingers resting upon the ancient journal he carried everywhere now like a sacred burden. Since the night of the visions, his face had changed. There was sorrow within him, yes, but also something deeper, an awakening that made him seem older than his years, as though eternity itself had brushed against his soul. "You didn't see what I saw," Daniel answered quietly. "There are things beyond logic, Marcus, things no science can explain." Marcus laughed bitterly. "That's what people say when they stop thinking clearly. Every so-called miracle eventually finds an explanation. Lightning was once considered divine punishment. Disease was blamed on demons. Humanity survives because of reason, not superstition." Daniel slowly lifted his eyes. "And yet reason cannot explain why the human soul still longs for eternity." The words lingered heavily between them. Marcus clenched his jaw. "Because people fear death. That's all. Faith is a way to escape reality." "No," Daniel replied firmly, his voice calm yet powerful. "Faith is what remains when reality collapses." For a brief instant, silence swallowed the room. Even the rain seemed to fade beneath the weight of their argument. Daniel spoke again, lower this time. "Tell me something honestly. If everything is random, why does it feel like something has been watching us our entire lives?" Marcus looked away immediately. That single movement did not escape Sophia, who had been standing quietly near the doorway beneath the shadow of her dark coat. Her pale eyes studied Marcus with unsettling intensity, as though she could see beyond flesh and bone into the hidden fractures of his spirit. Then she spoke softly, because Marcus already knows. Both men turned toward her. Marcus stood abruptly. "Stop talking nonsense." But Sophia stepped closer, her expression filled not with anger, but pity. "You've seen them before, haven't you?" she whispered. Long before Daniel ever heard the voice, the color drained from Marcus's face. Daniel stared at him in disbelief. "What is she talking about?" Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he lit another cigarette. "She's manipulating you." "No," Sophia replied. "He's hiding something." Thunder rolled across the heavens as Marcus suddenly slammed his fist against the table. "You want the truth?" he shouted. "Fine. When I was 12 years old, I saw one of those figures standing beside my mother's hospital bed the night she died. The cafe fell deathly silent. Marcus's breathing became uneven, haunted by memories he had spent decades burying beneath logic and denial. "I convinced myself it was grief," he whispered. "I had to. Because if what I saw was real, then everything I believe about this world is a lie." Daniel looked at his oldest friend and realized the greatest battle was not between faith and science. It was between truth and the fear of accepting it. The night air carried the scent of approaching winter, as Daniel and Sophia stood upon the hill behind the abandoned church, overlooking the sleeping city below. A pale moon hung above them like an ancient eye watching from eternity itself. Since the visions began, Daniel had felt the invisible threads of destiny tightening around his life with every passing hour, drawing him toward a truth both sacred and terrifying. Sophia stood quietly beside him, her dark hair moving gently in the cold wind. There was sadness in her eyes that night, but also certainty, the kind born only from years of carrying unbearable knowledge in silence. "At first," she whispered softly, "I thought the dreams were curses." Daniel turned toward her. "For years I saw the same man standing in light while the world burned around him." Her voice trembled faintly. "Cities falling into darkness, people crying out in fear, and you standing in the middle of it all." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "You saw me?" Sophia nodded slowly. "Long before we ever met, the wind suddenly grew colder. When I was a child," she continued, "my grandmother told me there would come a man marked before birth, a soul chosen to carry light into the final days of darkness." Her eyes met his with painful sincerity. "Daniel, I believe you are that man. Silence swallowed the hilltop. Far below them, church bells echoed faintly through the sleeping streets like warnings carried from another age. Daniel wanted to reject her words, to cling to the comfort of ordinary life, but deep within his spirit he already knew something impossible had awakened around him. Every vision, every sign, every voice had led him here. The Watchers know it too, Sophia said suddenly. Daniel frowned. Who are they really? Before she could answer, the sound of footsteps emerged from the darkness behind them. 3 figures clothed in black appeared between the dead trees, their faces hidden beneath heavy hoods. The air itself seemed to darken around them. Daniel instinctively stepped in front of Sophia, his pulse hammering in his chest. One of the figures spoke in a calm, hollow voice. "Bring us the book of prophecy." Daniel's blood turned cold. "The book belonged to my mother," he answered carefully. "Why do you want it?" "Because the words inside were never meant for mankind." The figures moved forward slowly. Sophia grabbed Daniel's arm desperately. "Don't let them take it," she whispered. "If they open the final pages, millions will die." Suddenly the ground trembled beneath them. Before Daniel could react, one of the hooded men seized Sophia violently and pulled her backward into the shadows. She screamed his name as darkness swallowed her form. "Daniel!" He lunged forward, but the remaining figures blocked his path unnaturally fast, their movements almost inhuman. "3 nights," the leader warned. "Bring the book to the old cathedral, or the girl dies." Then the wind rose violently. The figures vanished into the forest with Sophia, leaving only silence behind. Daniel stood frozen beneath the moonlight, his breathing broken and uneven. For the first time since hearing the heavenly voice, fear truly entered his soul, not fear for himself, but for the fate of someone who now seemed bound to him by forces older than the world itself. And somewhere deep within the darkness beyond the trees, Sophia's scream echoed one final time before disappearing into the night. The cathedral stood abandoned beyond the edge of the city, hidden beneath dead trees and decades of silence. Its shattered stained glass windows reflected the pale light of the moon like broken fragments of forgotten heaven. Deep beneath the ancient structure, candles burned around a circle carved into black stone, their flames trembling as hooded figures chanted in voices too low and ancient to understand. Marcus stood among them. Though his face remained calm, unrest clawed at his spirit like invisible hands. Only hours earlier he had betrayed Daniel, revealing the location of the prophetic book in exchange for wealth, influence, and protection from the Watchers. They had promised him power beyond human understanding. They had promised answers. But now, standing within that underground chamber, Marcus felt something far different from power. Felt terror. The leader of the Watchers stepped forward slowly and placed the ancient book upon the altar. Strange symbols covered its surface, shifting faintly, as though alive beneath the candlelight. "You have done well," the leader whispered. "Tonight the veil shall open." The chanting grew louder. Suddenly every candle extinguished at once. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Marcus froze. Then the symbols carved into the floor ignited with blinding crimson fire, illuminating the terrified faces beneath their hoods. A violent wind roared through the underground hall, though no doors had opened. The walls trembled. Somewhere within the darkness, something breathed. A voice echoed across the chamber, not human, not earthly, but vast enough to crush the soul itself. "You were warned." Marcus's blood turned to ice. The hooded figures immediately fell to their knees in panic. Some began praying desperately, while others screamed in fear. The air itself felt heavy with judgment. Then Marcus heard footsteps moving slowly behind him. He turned. At the far end of the chamber stood a towering shadow surrounded by flickering light, its silver eyes fixed directly upon him. And for the first time in his life, Marcus understood a horrifying truth. Daniel had never been insane. Something ancient and terrible had truly awakened. The ancient cathedral rose from the mountain cliffs like the corpse of a forgotten kingdom, its towering spires piercing the storm-filled heavens. Lightning split the skies above it while violent winds howled through broken stone corridors where generations of men had once prayed before darkness claimed the sacred place. Daniel climbed the worn steps alone, the prophetic book pressed tightly against his chest as though it carried the final breath of hope itself. The moment he crossed the threshold, an unnatural silence swallowed the storm outside. Inside the cathedral, hundreds of candles burned with pale blue flames around a massive ceremonial circle carved into the floor. Strange symbols twisted across the stone like living wounds, glowing faintly beneath the shadows. At the center stood Sophia, chained before an ancient altar of black marble. Her white dress was stained by rain and ash, yet her face remained calm, almost peaceful, as though she had already accepted the path destiny had written for her long ago. Around her knelt the Watchers. Dozens of hooded figures whispered prayers in a forgotten language, while the leader stood before the altar holding a curved blade forged from dark metal. Behind them, Marcus remained frozen in terror, his face pale and broken beneath the flickering candlelight. The arrogance that once filled him had vanished completely. Only guilt remained now. When Daniel stepped into the chamber, every hooded figure turned toward him at once. The leader smiled beneath his shadowed hood. "The chosen bearer of light," he whispered. At last, Daniel's eyes never left Sophia. "Let her go." The leader slowly raised the blade. "The prophecy demands blood. Through sacrifice, the gate shall open." Thunder shook the cathedral violently. Sophia looked at Daniel with tears shining in her eyes, though no fear lived within them. "You must not give them the book," she whispered softly. "No matter what happens." The leader extended his hand. "The book, Daniel." But before Daniel could move, Marcus suddenly stumbled forward and fell to his knees beside the altar. "Stop this," he cried desperately. "This isn't what you promised me." The Watchers ignored him completely. The chanting grew louder. The symbols upon the floor burst into crimson fire. Then the blade descended. Sophia screamed as darkness exploded through the cathedral like a living force released from imprisonment. Every candle extinguished instantly. Violent winds tore through the chamber. The stained glass windows shattered outward as shadows spread across the walls like enormous wings. Daniel fell to the ground beneath the overwhelming pressure of something ancient awakening beneath the earth itself. And then he heard it. A voice, not from the cathedral, not from the storm, but from somewhere beyond the world of men. "Do not fear." The words carried infinite authority, filling every corner of the darkness with impossible peace. Daniel slowly lifted his head. Far above the altar, a radiant light appeared within the broken ceiling of the cathedral. At first it seemed small, like a distant star hidden behind clouds, but within seconds it expanded into a brilliant ocean of golden fire descending from the heavens themselves. The entire cathedral trembled. The Watchers screamed in terror. "No," their leader whispered. "It cannot be him." The light descended upon Daniel like living glory. Every symbol carved into the floor shattered instantly beneath its brilliance. The darkness recoiled violently as though burned by the presence entering the cathedral. Daniel felt warmth surge through every part of his being, not earthly warmth, but something eternal, ancient, holy. The heavenly voice spoke again. "You were chosen before the foundations of the earth." Daniel rose slowly to his feet. His eyes reflected the golden light now surrounding him, and for one breathtaking moment the frightened man he once was seemed to disappear entirely. He stood with calm authority, untouched by fear, like a soul finally remembering who he truly was. The leader of the Watchers dropped the blade trembling. "Impossible," he whispered. Daniel stepped toward Sophia, as the chains binding her suddenly broke apart on their own. The light surrounding him grew stronger with every step, forcing the hooded figures backward. Some collapsed to the floor crying out in panic, while others covered their faces unable to endure the brightness flooding the cathedral. Marcus began weeping openly. "I'm sorry," he cried. "God forgive me. I didn't know. I didn't know." Daniel reached Sophia just as the shadows surrounding the altar rose one final time, twisting into the form of a monstrous figure with burning silver eyes. The creature released a roar that shook the cathedral walls, but the heavenly light answered instantly. A blinding explosion of gold erupted across the chamber. The darkness shattered. The creature dissolved into ash before the altar. The Watchers fell face first upon the stone floor in absolute terror, their chants replaced by desperate cries for mercy. Some attempted to flee, but the great doors of the cathedral slammed shut by unseen force. Then silence came. Pure. Oi, unshakable silence. The storm outside vanished. Moonlight poured gently through the broken ceiling as the golden light slowly faded around Daniel. Sophia collapsed weakly into his arms, alive though trembling. Marcus remained on his knees, sobbing uncontrollably, his spirit crushed beneath the weight of truth he could no longer deny. Daniel looked upward toward the heavens. Though the radiant presence had begun to disappear, he could still feel it near him, watching, guiding, protecting, and deep within his soul, he finally understood. The battle had never been about power. It had always been about light finding those lost in darkness before the end of all things arrived. Morning returned to the city like mercy after judgment. The violent storms had vanished, leaving the streets washed clean beneath pale golden sunlight. People emerged quietly from their homes, speaking in hushed voices about the strange events of the previous night. The sudden silence in the skies, the trembling of the earth, the mysterious light that had appeared above the mountains before dawn. Yet no one truly understood what had happened within the ancient cathedral. To most, it became another rumor, swallowed by time. But for Daniel, nothing would ever be ordinary again. The old fear that once haunted his soul had disappeared, replaced by a calm strength that seemed to flow from somewhere beyond himself. His eyes carried a quiet wisdom now, as though he had gazed upon eternity and returned forever changed. Wherever he walked, troubled souls were drawn toward him without understanding why. Broken men spoke honestly in his presence. The sick claimed peace after hearing his voice. Those drowning in despair began finding hope again. And Daniel never spoke of himself as chosen. Instead, he spoke of light. He traveled through forgotten neighborhoods, abandoned churches, hospitals, and streets filled with lonely hearts, reminding people that heaven had not abandoned them. He prayed beside the dying. He comforted the grieving. He listened to those the world no longer noticed. And though many doubted him, others swore that whenever Daniel prayed, an unexplainable warmth filled the air around them. Marcus changed most of all. The proud skeptic who once mocked faith now carried deep humility within his spirit. He abandoned his former life completely, spending his days helping the poor and repairing the ruined chapel near the hills where everything had begun. The shadows beneath his eyes remained, reminders of the darkness he had witnessed, but his heart no longer belonged to fear. Yet one mystery remained unsolved. Sophia vanished without a trace 3 days after the cathedral incident. No goodbye, no explanation, only a single note left upon Daniel's desk written in delicate silver ink. The light was never meant to stay hidden. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel still felt her presence in the wind moving through the trees, and on rare evenings beneath the stars, he would glimpse a distant figure dressed in black standing briefly beyond the hills, before disappearing into the darkness once more. Months passed. The city healed. Life continued, but deep within his soul, Daniel sensed the greater battle had not truly ended. One cold autumn night, he returned alone to his mother's old house. The air felt strangely familiar as he entered the silent bedroom where everything had first begun. Dust drifted through the moonlight. The house stood motionless around him like a sleeping memory. Then suddenly, the digital clock beside the bed flickered violently. Tiga driti am. Daniel froze. A soft wind moved through the room, though the windows remained closed. The shadows trembled faintly along the walls. And then the voice returned, deeper and more powerful than ever before. My beloved child. Daniel closed his eyes as peace flooded his spirit once again. Then the voice spoke the words that made his heart stand still. This is only the beginning. At that exact moment, far beyond the city lights, somewhere hidden within the darkness of the mountains, dozens of silver eyes slowly opened. In a world filled with noise, pressure, fear, and endless distractions, many people slowly lose connection with their purpose, their peace, and even with themselves. This story reminds us that the greatest battles are often spiritual and emotional, not physical. Fear, loneliness, doubt, pride, and hopelessness can quietly consume the human soul if we allow darkness to control our thoughts. Daniel's journey teaches that true strength is not found in power, money, or logic alone, but in faith, humility, courage, and the willingness to keep moving forward, even when life feels uncertain. Marcus represents many people today who hide pain behind skepticism, while Sophia symbolizes wisdom and spiritual awareness in times of confusion. The deeper message is that every person carries a light within them capable of bringing hope to others, No matter how broken the world becomes, kindness, forgiveness, prayer, and truth still have the power to heal hearts. Sometimes the hardest moments in life are not punishments, but preparation for a greater purpose. And often, the moment we believe everything is ending is actually the moment a new beginning quietly starts. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and comment one if you find the story meaningful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more similar stories. See you in the next part.